The hell is a moon dude? Oh, druid. And you want them to do what? Okay, but why would a druid be a civil engineer? Players often pick their mechanics first and then develop their character second. And that often leads to a character that they're not interested in playing long term. It'll be exciting to learn the new feats and all that stuff at first, but then shortly after, they lose interest. So let's build a character that you want to play for the long term. So first, come up with the idea. And when you do this, when you start writing down your ideas, don't get too descriptive in it because it's going to rope you into something that you might not necessarily want to play. Just use single words. What you want to do is try to define the overall idea you have for the character, what the concept of the actual character is. Pull from your favorite stories or history or mythologies, whatever floats your fancy. For example, I'm going to create a wizard. He's a young boy and he's obsessed with swords. Now think, what is their personality like? So this is beyond just the idea of what the character is. What is their personality? How does the world see them and react to this character? What are the traits and quirks that this character has? And what type of disposition? Are they super friendly to everybody they meet, or are they more reserved that you have to prod them to get them to say much? My wizard is going to be shy and awkward. He shrinks back anytime there's a social interaction that comes about. Now, what is that character like on the inside now? What are the emotional responses that the character has to the world and to the things that happen to them? Are they quick to rage, or are they more subdued, or do their feelings get hurt easily? Are they generally depressed? Now, what is their morality and principles? Because there are many different sets of moralities and principles. You want to really understand what your characters are. Something important to help define the character is think about how they treat people who are considered their inferiors. Not that there's anyone that's really on a ladder like that, but in society sometimes there are social constructs that put people in more power over other people. So think about how your character treats those that he is in power of or has power over. If you're enjoying this video and you find it useful at all, please hit the like button and leave any comments that you have down below. The more likes and comments that I get, the more people will find my videos. Let's think about the specifics of your character now. We'll start with the character's mannerisms and looks. Is there anything odd that they do? Is there always a certain routine that they have when they enter a new place? Is there any odd quirks that they have? Do they have like a little or some type of click that they do when they get nervous? Do they dress really flashy and flamboyant? Are they always on top of the latest fashions? Or are they pretty fashion backwards? Are there any interesting rituals that they have that might be a product of a religion or a cultural background? As an example, my young wizard's gonna have an eye patch and he stammers a lot when he speaks because he's so nervous. Now we're going to think about your character's ideals, bonds, and flaws. So you'll see this actually on the character sheet, but they're more for flavor than they are for anything else. But they do help you actually develop your character more. So for the ideal, it's going to be something that, as the word says, is going to be what the player thinks of as an ideal world. For instance, do they believe in a just world? Do they believe in a world that supports the arts? Now, the next part of that is going to be the bond. For the bond, it's going to be something that the character puts above all things. The character feels an obligation to or a responsibility for. Is there a religious order that they have a bond to, or is your character hell-bent on getting revenge for the death of their sibling or parent? And now the flaw. The flaw is very straightforward. The flaw is going to be something that your character does that is unsavory in some way. Are they a compulsive liar? Do they have a tendency to make poor decisions? Think about flaws, because flaws, in some ways, flaws more than ideals and bonds, they're really going to help you interact with the campaign setting and NPCs that your game master puts in front of you. Now, my wizard's gonna believe in a fair and just world, and he's dedicated to his order of wizardry. His flaw is gonna be, rather than use his magic to protect himself, he's foolishly gonna opt to use a weapon instead. For the last part of this, what you want to do is think about what type of goals that your character has. Do they want to become the greatest sorcerer that ever lived? Do they want to save their village? There are many ways that you can approach goals. You can make them big, you can make them small, you can make them something that you collaborate with the party about. You definitely want your character to have at least a goal. Part of the goals is thinking about what would your character do to reach that goal? What obstacles are they willing to overcome? What principles and morality are they willing to just throw away to achieve this goal? Are they going to walk all over their friends and party members? Or are they going to forsake the world in order to achieve this goal? Do they let anyone in on their goals? Do they talk to the party members? Do they talk to NPCs about what their goals are? All this will come into play as you create a story arc for your character. My wizard character's big goal is going to be to become the greatest swordmaster that ever lived. If you're interested in these parts of the character building, check out my video on how to round out your characters. It's just some tools I use to make more interesting characters in general. Now's the part that some of you I know have been waiting for, and that's building the mechanics of your character. The first step of this will be deciding on the ancestry of your character. Wizards of the Coast recently changed the terminology here. It used to be called race, but for good reason they decided to use ancestry instead of race, just because it made more sense and it was more sensitive. When you're deciding on the ancestry, you want to try to pick an ancestry that matches the character concept that you've already created. Look at the cultural traits and characteristics of those ancestries and try to pick the ancestry that makes the most sense. As you're looking at those things, also pay attention to the mechanical features of that ancestry. You want to try to pick the mechanics that make the most sense as well. Look not only at the initial features of that ancestry, but if there's any boons that come along the way. That'll help you create some type of story arc for your character. Now, a wizard can really be from any ancestry. So I'm going to pick something that will help with the detail side of my character concept. So he wants to become a sword master. So maybe I'll use an ancestry that gives a boost to the strength. And that way I can have my character playing around with swords and other weapons as part of his growth. Now we're going to pick the class of the character. What class is going to fit that concept? If it's a knight, you want to choose something like a fighter or a paladin. If it's more of a traditional magic user, you might want to pick wizard or a sorcerer. Really put a lot of thought into that. This is the job essentially that the character does. It's not class in the traditional sense of like a caste system or something along those lines. This is your character's day-to-day function. Also look at, as the character levels up, what type of features are going to be added with the particular class. That will also help create goals that you can stack as you grow your character. And the background is more just going to be flavor. So pick something from the details that you came up with that will help determine what type of background your character has. And as you're picking the optional features for the class and background, pick the features that make the most sense for the ideas that you came up with, for the details and the concept and all that. For instance, my young wizard, well, clearly I'm going to pick wizard for the class because I've already said many times that my character is a wizard. But maybe if I found I wanted a character that used more natural magic instead of learned magic, I would go with the sorcerer instead. But for this example, I am going to stick with the wizard. As I look at the wizard class, I'm seeing I can branch off into these different subclasses, and I see something there called a blade singer. That'd be perfect for my wizard who wants to be a sword master. Now for the background, this is where I can have a little fun and play into my character's awkwardness and shyness. Give him kind of a goofy edge to him, and I'm gonna make him a folk hero. He accidentally slayed a marauding baddie that was harassing his town by tripping and stabbing it with a sword. That adds a comical edge to it, but it also creates this idea that he's not very good with a sword at the start, and I can grow him into becoming a wizard who happens to wield a sword. And now for the fun, we get to roll some dice. You can look at the player's handbook. It'll give you some idea of what each stat really is, and I will go over these in detail in the next video. Instead of thinking about the hierarchy, I want you to just focus on which is the best stat you want to have and which is the worst. both should play into the concept that you're trying to create. If you have a character who is a wizard and has a natural talent at that, you want to bump that intelligence up. If they want to become a sword master but they're not very good at it, maybe you want to have strength or dexterity on the low end of your stats. You really want to play that up and have a character that can be fun to play and grow into something entirely different, because it's going to give you a sense of accomplishment as you do it. So my wizard, he's going to have smarts. So I'm going to make his best stat his intelligence. He's going to be Butterfingers with the sword, so I'm going to knock his strength down to my lowest stat. I can grow, I can add to that strength stat as I go, but it makes it more interesting and fun to play. It'll give you a good laugh. When we build characters in this order, rather than starting with our mechanics, it really does create a character that we want to play for a long time. All that initial footwork we did in the beginning, that's going to make it a lot easier for you to actually roleplay this. Now, I will say, once you're done, take all these notes, copy them, and give them over to your dungeon master, because even if you don't come up with a backstory for the character, your dungeon master will really appreciate having this information so they can incorporate that into their setting and into their campaign. Thank you for spending this time with me. I'll be continuing this series for at least a few more videos. I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Okay, but why would a druid be a civil engineer?
I'm sorry. What can I do to help?